For 3 years, every single Tuesday, the same man came into the same diner, sat in the same back booth, and ordered almost the same thing. He never made trouble. He never asked for anything. He tipped well, but not so well that anyone would talk about it. He kept a ball cap pulled low and a book open on the table, and the staff came to know him the way you know a piece of furniture you'd miss if it were gone. The quiet Tuesday guy in the back, harmless, gentle, a little sad around the eyes. They did not know his name. They did not know that the book on the table was usually the same page for an hour, and they had no idea, not one of them, in 3 years, that the man in the back booth was watching them. Carefully, the way you watch over something. He was paying attention to every shift, every regular, every small kindness and small cruelty that passed across that diner floor, and most of all he was watching one person, and waiting for the right moment and the right way to pay back a debt that she did not even know she had given him. Because 3 years earlier, on the worst night of a very bad year, that diner, and one waitress in it, had done something for the man in the back booth that he had never been able to forget. And the man in the back booth was Keanu Reeves. This is the story of why he kept coming back, and of what he finally did. On the Tuesday, he stopped just watching. There is a diner on the old highway outside Flagstaff called the Daybreak, and it is open 24 hours, which in the high desert in winter means it is the only warm light for miles after midnight. It is not much to look at. A long counter, a row of booths along the windows, a neon sign that buzzes, a pie case that revolves slowly under a yellow bulb. It smells like coffee and griddle and the particular comfort of a place that never closes. Truckers stop there at 3 in the morning. Cops on the night shift. Lonely people who can't sleep and would rather be lonely somewhere with other human beings in it. The Daybreak has been catching the strays of the highway for 30 years, and it has never once turned off its light. It is owned by a man named Roy, who inherited it from his father and has run it, without much joy and without much complaint, for most of his adult life. And the heart of the place, the reason the regulars are regulars, is a waitress named Donna. Donna Ruiz had worked the Daybreak for 11 years by the time this story begins. She knew every trucker's order and every cop's coffee and every insomniac's story. She was the kind of waitress who noticed when a regular went quiet, who slid an extra biscuit onto a plate without mentioning it, who could tell from the way a stranger sat down at the counter at 2 in the morning whether they wanted conversation or silence, and gave them whichever it was. She was 33 years old, and she had been giving herself away to that diner one shift at a time for over a decade. What almost none of the customers knew was why. 3 years before the man in the back booth ever walked in, on a freezing Tuesday near midnight, the Daybreak was nearly empty and about to be wiped down for the slow hours. And a man came in alone. He looked, Dana would remember later, like someone at the very end of his rope, unshaven, hollow-eyed, carrying the kind of grief that bends a person's whole body. He sat in the back booth and ordered black coffee, and nothing else, and stared at the table like the coffee was already more than he could manage. Dana had seen that look before. You see everything, working nights, so she did not rush him out at closing. She brought him a full plate he hadn't ordered. Eggs, toast, hash browns, a slice of the cherry pie that was about to be thrown out anyway, and she set it down in front of him and she said, "Eat something, honey. You look like the world's been sitting on you." And then, because the diner was empty and the night was long, she sat down across from him for a few minutes, and she didn't pry, and she didn't ask his name, and she just let a stranger not be alone for a little while at the worst hour of a bad night. When he tried to leave $100 bill under the cold coffee cup, she pushed it back across the table. "This one's on me," she said. "You didn't come in here for the food. Take care of yourself." She had no idea who he was. She would have done it for anybody. That was the entire point. The man walked out into the cold, still alive, in a way he had not entirely been when he walked in. And the next Tuesday, he came back. To understand what that kindness cost Dana Ruiz, and why she had so little of herself left to give, and gave it anyway, you have to know what she had already given up by the time she ever met him. Dana was 22 when her parents died. It was a car accident on an icy road, both of them at once, on an ordinary night that split her life cleanly into before and after. And it left her, at 22, the only person standing between her 10-year-old brother Tyler and a foster system that would have swallowed him whole. Here is the part that matters. At 22, Dana Ruiz had a voice. A real one. She had sung her whole life, in church, in school, anywhere they'd let her. And people who knew about these things had stopped her to say so. And she had auditioned the spring before the accident for a conservatory program 3 states away. A serious one. And she had gotten in. Full scholarship. A door opening onto the only future she had ever wanted. She turned it down 4 days after the funeral. She did not agonize over it, the way people imagine you would. There was nothing to agonize about. There was a 10-year-old boy who had just lost his whole world, and she was all he had left, and you do not leave a 10-year-old to chase a song. So she stayed. She got the job at the Daybreak because it was hiring and it was close, and the night shifts meant she could be home when Tyler got out of school. She raised her brother. She went to every parent-teacher conference and every baseball game and learned to forge a mother's signature on permission slips. She paid for braces and then for a beat-up first car, and then, when the time came, for college, working doubles and a second job she never told anyone about to keep Tyler in school without loans crushing him. She never told Tyler about the conservatory. He grew up thinking his sister was just a waitress who happened to hum a lot. She wanted it that way. She did not want him carrying the weight of what she'd traded for him. That was hers to carry, not his. And here is the quiet tragedy of Dana Ruiz, the one she would never have called a tragedy. Somewhere in 11 years of double shifts and forged signatures and braces and tuition, she stopped believing she had ever been a singer at all. The dream did not die in a dramatic moment. It just got buried, a little deeper every year, under the daily weight of being the one who held everything together. By 33, the conservatory felt like something that had happened to a different person. She still sang, softly, to herself, closing up the diner alone at the end of a shift, when she thought no one was around to hear. But she had long ago decided that the singing was just a thing she did, like breathing, and not a thing that was ever going to matter to anyone. She was wrong about that last part. Because someone had been listening every Tuesday for 3 years. The owner, Roy, was not a cruel man, but he was a closed one, and that is its own kind of obstacle to a person like Dana. Roy had run the Daybreak for 30 years without ever once telling Dana she mattered. He'd had his own dreams. A long time ago, he was going to leave this town, do something, be someone. And then his father had gotten sick, and the diner had needed running, and the years had simply closed over him like water. And somewhere in there, Roy had decided that dreams were a sucker's game, and kindness was a luxury that working people couldn't afford. He paid Dana fairly, and worked her hard, and took her completely for granted, the way you take for granted the thing that has never once let you down. The truth, which Roy could not have admitted even to himself, was that Dana's relentless goodness bothered him. She gave away biscuits he had to pay for. She sat with sad strangers on the clock. She poured warmth into that diner like it was free, and it shamed him, somewhere underneath, because she was everything he had stopped being able to be. 3 years earlier, on the freezing night Dana fed the grieving stranger for free, it had been Roy who'd grumbled that they weren't a charity, and that she could pay for that pie out of her own tips. And she had. Without a word. So that was the world the man in the back booth had walked into. A diner held together by one woman who had given up her whole life for other people and expected nothing back, working for a man who'd forgotten how to see her, raising a brother who didn't know what she'd sacrificed, singing to herself at midnight where she thought nobody could hear. And for 3 years, every Tuesday, Keanu Reeves sat in the back and watched all of it, and learned all of it, and waited. He learned her story the way you learn anything at a diner, in pieces, over time, by listening. He heard Tyler's name come up, and the college, and the worry over tuition. He overheard. One Tuesday, a regular asked Dana why a girl who sang like that was still slinging hash at 33, and he heard her laugh it off, and he saw the thing move across her face before she covered it. He pieced together, over many Tuesdays, the shape of what she had given up. The conservatory, the parents, the 11 years. And he heard her sing. That was the thing that undid him. Late, near the end of his shift, when the diner had emptied and she thought she was alone, Donna would sing softly while she wiped down the counter, and the voice that came out of her was not a waitress who hummed a lot. It was the real thing. The thing she had buried. And the man in the back booth, who happened to know exactly how rare the real thing is and exactly how many doors it could still open, sat very still in the dark and listened to a 33-year-old woman sing to an empty diner about a life she'd decided she would never have. And he made up his mind that he was going to do something about it. But he did not do it quickly. And he did not do it with a flourish, because he understood something about Dana Ruiz. She was a woman who would not take a $100 tip even on the worst night, who had pushed his money back across the table and told him to take care of himself. You cannot simply hand a person like that a gift. They will refuse it the way she refused the tip. He had to wait for the right moment and find the right way, and he had to make her understand that this was not charity. It was a debt. Hers, owed back to her, exactly as she had once refused to let it be owed to her. The moment came in the 3rd year, in the spring, when he overheard Dana on the phone in the back, her voice tight, arranging to take out one more loan and pick up one more shift to cover the last of Tyler's tuition, and a medical bill that had landed at the worst time, about $30,000 all told, between the debt and what was still owed. Tyler was weeks from graduating, and Dana, who had given this boy her entire youth, was calmly preparing to sacrifice the very last of herself to get him across the finish line. And then, Keanu understood with a kind of ache, she was going to look up at 33 and find that there was nothing left of her own life to go back to. And she was going to decide that was simply how it was always meant to be. That was the Tuesday he stopped just watching. He waited until the diner emptied out near closing, until it was just Dana wiping down the counter and Roy doing the books in the back. And he came up to the counter, and he took off the ball cap, and for the first time in 3 years, he let her see his face in the full light. Dana's hand stopped on the counter. It took her a second. Then, it took her breath, because she knew that face. Everyone knew that face. And right behind the recognition came a confusion so total she actually laughed. A small, bewildered sound. Hang on. You've been coming in here on Tuesdays for... She stopped. "You're for 3 years," he said gently. "Yeah, it's me. I'm sorry to do it like this. I didn't know how else." Roy had come out from the back, and he froze in the doorway, the ledger still in his hand. "Dana," Keanu said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me get all the way through it before you argue, because I know you're going to argue." He set the cap on the counter. 3 years ago, on a freezing Tuesday, I came in here at midnight. I was about as far down as I have ever been in my life. I'd lost some people I loved, and I was in a bad year, the kind you're not sure you're going to come out the other side of. And I sat in that back booth, and you brought me a plate I didn't order. And you sat down across from me and you didn't ask me a single question. And when I tried to leave you money, you pushed it back and told me to take care of myself. His voice was steady, but something was working underneath it. You have no idea what that night did for me. You don't even remember it, I'd bet. You've done it for 100 people. But I walked out of here still standing, and a big part of the reason was a waitress who treated a wrecked stranger like he was worth 10 minutes of her life. Dana's eyes had filled. I do remember, she whispered. The cherry pie. You look so. She pressed her lips together. I've come back every Tuesday since, he said. Partly because this place became the one fixed thing in a hard time, and partly because I have spent 3 years trying to figure out how to pay you back for something you'd never let me pay you back for. He paused. And along the way I found out a few things. I found out about your parents, about Tyler, and the conservatory you turned down 4 days after the funeral. About 11 years of double shifts and a second job you never told anybody about. His voice dropped. And I've heard you sing, Dana, lately, when you think nobody's here. I've heard you. You didn't give up a hobby 11 years ago. You gave up a gift. A real one. The kind most people would kill to have, and you buried it under everybody else's life without once complaining. Dana was crying openly now, and shaking her head, already starting to refuse, the way he had known she would. Don't, he said softly. Don't push this one back across the table. Not this time. Hear me out. What he offered her was not a check, though there was money in it. He understood she would never have taken just money. He had spent 3 years getting it right. There was a voice program, a real one, a serious one, run by people he knew and trusted, the kind of door that does not open twice in a life. And he had arranged for her to audition, a true audition, on her own merit. No strings, no favors, just a foot back in a door she'd assumed was bricked over forever. She would get in on that voice, or not at all. He had only opened the door, not walked her through it. And so that she could actually walk through it, so that the old reflex of sacrifice could not reach up one more time and pull her back down, he was clearing the weight. Tyler's last tuition. The medical bill, the $30,000 she'd been about to bury herself under. Gone, handled, not as charity, he kept saying, every time she started to refuse. As a debt. Hers. You told me 3 years ago that the meal was on you, he said. That I didn't come in for the food, and I should take care of myself. So I'm telling you the same thing back. This one's on me, Dana. You didn't spend 11 years here for the tips. Take care of yourself. For once. Let somebody hold the door for the person who's been holding it for everybody else her whole life. Donna Ruiz sat down on a counter stool because her legs would not hold her, and she put her face in her hands, and 11 years of carrying everything alone came out of her all at once. And Roy, gruff, closed-off Roy, who had never once in 3 decades told this woman she mattered, crossed the diner and put a clumsy hand on her shoulder and said, in a voice none of his regulars would have recognized. "I should have told you a long time ago, kid, what you are to this place. What you are, period." He swallowed hard. "Go sing. We'll figure out the Tuesdays." Keanu gave them both the real smile then. The warm one, the slightly crooked one, the unhurried one. "That's all I wanted," he said. Then he put the ball cap back on, and he left a 20 under his coffee cup the way he had 150 times before. And he walked out into the cold high desert night and was gone before either of them could say his name out loud. It was the last Tuesday he came as a stranger. But it was not the last Tuesday he came. Here is the part the easy version of this story leaves out. Because a single perfect night is the dramatic part, and what a life becomes afterward is the part that's actually true. It did not transform overnight. A 33-year-old who has buried her own voice for 11 years does not simply dust it off and become who she might have been. Dana almost didn't go to the audition. She talked herself out of it twice, the old reflex telling her it was selfish, that she was too old, that the door was a fluke and she'd embarrass herself. It was Tyler who got her there in the end. Because Dana finally told her brother the truth. All of it, the conservatory, the scholarship she turned down 4 days after the funeral, the 11 years, and Tyler, 21, weeks from a graduation he'd never once questioned how he was paying for, learned in a single conversation that his entire adult life had been built on the quiet wreckage of his sisters. He did not take it the way she feared. He drove 11 hours to put her in that audition room himself. "You raised me," he told her. "Now sit down and let me do one thing for you." That was the second debt repaid that spring, and it was the one that mattered most to her. She got in. On The Voice. The way she'd gotten in at 22. Except this time there was no funeral 4 days later to make her turn it away. It was slow, and it was hard, and she was the oldest person in most of her classes, and she did not care. The voice that had sung to an empty diner at midnight for 11 years turned out to be exactly what the people who knew about these things had said it was, all those years ago. She does not sing in stadiums. This is not that kind of story. But she sings. For real, for people, for a living, in the life she was always supposed to have, the one she gave away and somehow got back. Roy kept the daybreak running, and he was different after that night. A little less closed. A little more like the man he might have been before the years closed over him. He hired 2 waitresses to replace the one irreplaceable Dana, and he kept her old booth, the back one by the window, with a small reserved card on it, for a Tuesday regular who still turned up now and then, quietly, to sit and have the cherry pie and watch the warmest light for miles stay lit. Because Keanu kept coming. Not every week anymore, but he comes. He sits in the back, ball cap low, and Roy brings the pie himself now and doesn't make a fuss. And sometimes Dana is in town and comes by on a Tuesday and sings a little, late, when the diner's empty. Except now she knows he's listening, and she sings it right to the back booth, to the man who heard her when she thought no one in the world could hear her at all. Years from now there will be people in an audience somewhere who have no idea that the woman singing to them spent 11 years slinging hash on a desert highway and gave up everything for a 10-year-old boy, and never once asked for it back. They won't know about the cherry pie, or the freezing Tuesday, or the stranger in the back booth who kept watch for 3 years. They'll just know her voice moved them. And that's enough. That was always the whole point. I've told a lot of stories on this channel, but I keep coming back to this one, and it took me a while to understand why. It would be easy to make this a story about a famous man's grand gesture, the celebrity who swooped in and changed a waitress's life. But that's not the part that stays with me. The part that stays with me is the 3 years. Anybody with money can write a check. What this man actually did was come back every Tuesday for 3 years and pay attention to a woman the whole world had decided was just a waitress, including the woman herself. He saw her. Long before he ever helped her, he simply saw her, week after week, when no one else was bothering to. And I think that's the rarer thing, by far. Most of us walk past 100 danas a week, people who've given their whole lives away quietly and decided their own dreams don't count. And we never even slow down enough to notice. And here's what gets me. She never knew he was watching. For 3 years she was just being kind, being good, singing to an empty room, with no idea that any of it was being witnessed or would ever be repaid. Which means she wasn't doing it for a reward. She was just doing it. That's who she was when she thought nobody was looking. I don't know if I'd have remembered. If a stranger showed me one kindness on the worst night of my life, I'd like to think I'd spend 3 years finding a way to pay it back. But honestly, I'm not sure. Most of us aren't sure. We're grateful in the moment, and then the moment passes, and we forget. The remembering, that's the rare and difficult thing. And maybe that's the point. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for quiet kindness, for gratitude, and for never forgetting the people who were good to him when it counted. If it stayed with you, drop a comment and tell me the line that got you. I read every single one of them. And if you know someone who's quietly given their whole life away for other people and never been thanked for it, share this with them. It might be the thing they needed to hear today. If you want more stories like this one, subscribe and stick around. There's another coming that I think you'll feel. See you in the next one.